Speaking of delivering for the American people, President Trump makes his triumphant return, of course, tonight, as was mentioned. It's 5 years after his last State of the Union address. This is a joint address to Congress, not a State of the Union, because a State of the Union is typically delivered on or around the sort of the one-year anniversary, first year in office. But this president is working so quickly, I invited him to come early in the process to give this joint address because there's so much to report to the people, and we're delighted he's going to be there.
Yeah, just like Speaker Johnson said there, it isn't the State of the Union, it's a joint address because he is in a position to be giving it the first time for the second term, which is non-sequential, complicated. It's going to look like a State of the Union. And honestly, 6 weeks into this presidency, there is a lot to talk about regarding how President Trump has affected the State of the Union. Let's get to our guest. Joe Concha is with us right now, of course, a Fox News contributor. His book, The Greatest Comeback Ever Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign, is coming up. We're in March, which means it's 1 month away. Joe, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you here.
Always a pleasure to be here, Amy. How are you on this fine State of the Union Tuesday? By the way, can we call it State of the Union? Enough of this joint session to Congress.
It's just for nerds. People who are like, actually, yes, exactly. I agree with that.
He hasn't been in office for the last year, so it has to be called, shut up. It's a State of the Union. Sorry.
I completely agree with you on that. Give me your thoughts on, the idea of renewing the American dream is what he's supposed to talk about tonight. In the meantime, we've got Justin Trudeau, Governor Trudeau, if you ask President Trump, calling President Trump Donald. Zelenskyy is saying maybe I'm going to come back to the table because he says it was regrettable. There's a lot going on in one individual day here.
Yeah, the governor of Trumpsylvania, the 51st state of Canada, he's really been vocal on his way out the door, hasn't he? Real tough guy now. This goes back to what we heard during the inauguration as far as the golden age of America and just optimism, which we don't hear from Democrats in any way, shape, or form. All I'm reading today now is that they're going to have maybe noisemakers, or they're all going to wear Ukrainian-colored ties in solidarity with Vladimir Zelenskyy. What are you in solidarity with this guy about exactly? I mean, it looks like he's about to go dressed to go raise the roof at a club in Istanbul, all right, when he shows up to the Oval Office, for starters. And then he had this deal, this great deal. Raw minerals, we have corporate boots on the ground. That is the security guarantee. America's not going to let anything happen to all of our interests there as far as Russia, and the Europeans would provide military equipment on top of that. This ends this war that no one wants anymore, and Zelensky's got to go in there and pick a fight. And now it sounds like he's going to come back to the negotiating table, or not negotiating, just sign the damn thing already,
right,
and we'll be good to go. So overall, you look at these first 6 weeks of the Trump presidency, Annie, and it's success after success. When you take away all the noise as far as finding all this waste, fraud, and corruption through Doge, but more importantly, the U.S. southern border. I always heard from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden that Congress needed to act, and we needed this big bill in order to pass. All I know is we had 10,000 crossings a day under Biden at one point, and now we're almost down to virtually zero, just by the president saying don't come and sending a couple of thousand troops down there, and that's what did the trick. So that's going to be a big story tonight, obviously.
I think watching, we played the whole exchange here on our show because it was just so wild to watch the exchange between Zelenskyy and Trump in the Oval Office. Zelenskyy continuing to talk over. Nobody wanted to let anybody speak, but you're in the Oval Office. You're in the President of the United States office there. It was so bizarre to watch all of that. And, days removed now from that event, knowing that they had the deal ready to sign and the sandwiches to go with it for lunch, waiting in the room next to the Oval Office. I'm watching the Democrats, really react negatively to this because they're pro-Zelenskyy, which is ironically not necessarily pro-American.
Yeah.
What do they want what do they want this president to do for Ukraine that America hasn't already done beyond really our means to be able to adhere to it?
$350 billion spent so far. $100 billion of it we can't even account for. So Democrats are pro-waste, fraud, and corruption, apparently, and no accountability. No, it's not that they want Trump to do anything for Ukraine. They want him to fail. So if Trump achieves a peace deal, that's very bad for the Democratic Party. Not for the world, not for the Ukrainian people, not for the Russians, and not for the Europeans, and not for the American people. It's bad for Democrats. So reflexively, they take this stand like they're standing up against this stupid line. They keep saying over and over again, they're standing up for democracy in Ukraine. That is not a democracy. You're literally seeing men pulled out of restaurants, pulled out of their homes, and being forced to the front line. And meanwhile, we haven't heard elections being held there in 3 years because Zelenskyy knows that if there is an election, good chance he loses. So overall, yeah, you got to have good faith brokering here. And Zelenskyy had a 2-inch putt here. Just sign that agreement. Then we could talk about security guarantees through having American investments in your country, and you end this war and you save perhaps hundreds of thousands of lives, over the 100,000 lives that have already been lost. I'm not saying that Zelenskyy is the bad guy here. Putin was the bad guy. But the reality is they're not leaving the Donbass region, eastern Ukraine. Unfortunately, that has to go to Russia because they're not going to leave, and there's no military way to get them out of there. So give them that. Ukraine gets a great investment deal with us, and they don't get to join NATO because that's what provoked this whole thing in the first place. And that's the end of it because no one wants this war anymore. Zelenskyy still thinks it's 2022, and the American media are completely on his side. Some are, yes, but this ain't 2022 anymore because people know what a stalemate looks like and smells like, and that's exactly what this is, and we don't want to have any more American money going there anymore.
We've seen the entire time that Donald Trump has been on the political scene, the Democrats salivating over trying to tie Donald Trump to Putin and to Russian interests. Nobody loves and needs the Russian situation and scenario more than the Democratic Party right now, the people who only care about politics, never care about policy. The tying Donald Trump to Putin is the only thing that matters to this crazy wing of the Democratic Party, and they're willing to put war in priority over Americans' best interest here in order to continue the ruse so that Donald Trump looks bad. How does Donald Trump respond to that tonight at this joint address to Congress / State of the Union and going on here?
He should say, you know what? We should have a special counsel, and we should have a former FBI director like Robert Mueller. We should give him millions of dollars and thousands of resources to investigate whether I have any ties to Vladimir Putin. Oh, that's right. We already did that. We already did that for 3 years during the first presidency. The fact they keep going back to this, he's a Putin puppet. I'm telling you, this tells you that we have a Democratic Party that has no message, all right, around inflation, because we saw that over the last 4 years, around crime, certainly didn't have anything around the border. They're apparently a pro-war party now because they want the war to go on in Ukraine in perpetuity. And overall, who's their leader? Like, who's leading this party? Is it Jasmine Crockett? Because you want to see a lot more of her if you're a Republican. That's certainly for sure. Is it AOC? Is it Chuck Schumer? Is it who? Goofy Tim Walz, who's entertaining a presidential run? They don't have a leader. They don't have a message, and they don't have anything optimistic about the country. So they could do all their protesting they want as they like with noisemakers or walking out during Trump's speech. That didn't reflect well on Nancy Pelosi at all when she did that during the last State of the Union that Trump had, and it won't reflect well now. And by the way, if Trump says something along the lines that Democrats in the Senate refuse to back, 45 of them, enough to kill it, women competing against men in sports, that being a bad thing, if they somehow object to that or boo, go ahead. Because you're on the 20 side of an 80-20 issue. There's just no common sense on that side of the aisle anymore. It's really remarkable to watch.
Yeah, you're completely right. Speaking with Joe Concha right now, the Russia story is the in case of emergency break glass, and then you pull out the latest Russia hoax that you can come up with. That's Donald Trump knows that. Watching the joint address tonight, we expect that maybe some Democrats won't show up. Maybe some Democrats will show up in, they'll have to pick which Ukraine blue and yellow outfit that they wear to support Ukraine over the United States tonight. What do you expect to see from the opposition party at this joint address this evening?
Some said they will not show up, so they'll boycott it. And okay, great. You don't see them. They're out of sight, out of mind, I suppose. I'm seeing that Hakeem Jeffries is saying, let's not do any noisemakers. Let's not heckle the president. If they do that, they'll look immature, and as usual, they're allowing their emotions to get to them. But more importantly, they'll look like the party that's taking their cues from MSNBC at this point. And that's not what you want to do, because at this point, MSNBC, I think, has more employees than actual viewers. So, that message is gone, right? I mean, there never was one, really. I mean, if it's just to resist, and they think, again, this is 2017, and if they scream loud enough that that's going to have some sort of negative impact on Trump, the problem is they're on the wrong side of almost every major issue. And when that happens, and the American people still, support Donald Trump, 50, 51, 52% approval, which is his all-time high, they're going to look stupid, they're going to look immature, and they're going to look like a party that isn't offering anything in terms of a tangible solution while not even be able to have a conversation, instead acting like, it's sophomore year and it's well past their curfew at this point.
Joe, before we let you go, we have a poll every day on the show. We ask our YouTube audience to go vote in it. And today is grade the State of the Union, the state of the country. Granted, a lot of people are making sure that we understand that it started as an F before Donald Trump took over. What do you think about the state of the country right now?
State of the country is improving, right? We mentioned the border before. This war in Ukraine could be ending as well, so that's all good. And we just see overall more Americans are optimistic about the next 4 years than certainly they were during the last four. So the state of our union is strong, but until some real laws are passed, besides executive orders, it is one that is still in flux, and it is a state of the union, Annie, that is hopelessly divided.
That is absolutely the case. Well, we look forward to talking to you again pretty soon. That book of yours is going to be come out, and the greatest comeback ever, materializing now in front of our eyes as the president is going to deliver that address tonight. We look forward to following you on X and getting all your hot takes.
Thanks, Annie.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. Joe Concha on X at Joe Concha TV. A great follow. He is always very pithy with his remarks, but also paying a lot of attention to how the media is reacting and kind of keep the temperature of the room by following Joe Concha TV on X. His book, The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big Beautiful Campaign, will be available in April.